Hi, I'm Robert Estrin at livingpianos.com. In the second part of the evolution of the piano, in the first section we talked about some innovations with new composite materials and innovative designs in acoustic pianos, traditional pianos. Well, today we're going to talk about the new categories of pianos, digital pianos and even hybrid pianos. Now, what are these? Well, if you go back a number of years, the very first electric pianos, as they were called, sounded nothing like pianos. The early Wurlitzer and, of course, the classic Fender Rhodes pianos had keyboards, but they hit tines and had bell-like sounds. But then with digital sampling technology in the 1970s and really in the 80s is when digital pianos, finally a keyboard could sound like a piano. How? They actually had little recordings of each note of a piano and then loops, because the technology wasn't adept enough to record the entire note. So you'd have the attack portion, then the rest of it was looped and would make a synthesized fade out of each note of the piano. In fact, I had one of the original Kurzweil K250s, an 88-note weighted digital wooden key piano and with a lot of other sounds, and I really enjoyed that in my studio. Well, digital sampling technology has evolved to such an extent that now there are instruments that have 3 recordings for each note or even more at different velocity levels, and the realism is astounding. And there's even a newer technology called physical modeling that takes into account the interaction of the sound and the attack of the hammer on the string and many other facets. And even new types of pianos can be created, pianos that couldn't even exist in the real world, 12 or 14-foot pianos with aluminum strings, and all kinds of crazy things are possible in the virtual world. Some of the best digital pianos today are software-based, which is why a lot of professionals have what are called keyboard controllers. These have no sounds, but they use MIDI to transmit to a laptop or other computer so that you can use the latest in technology with a good keyboard controller. Now, digital pianos generally fall into 2 categories. There are the portable keyboards, which are hooked into sound systems, and there are self-contained units that are kind of like pianos, living room pianos, but they have no strings and they have a different type of action mechanism. Now, in my opinion, and a lot of you might have differing opinions, but I'm going to throw it out there, I think some of the inexpensive digital pianos, even some under $1,000 with good weighted actions and good piano samples, are, for a lot of reasons, just as good as instruments costing much more. What you get when you spend more are more substantial sound systems, more substantial furniture, and many, many more features. Some of the top-of-the-line digital pianos from Roland and Yamaha, Korg, Kurzweil, and others have phenomenal technologies, like being able to plug microphones in for harmonizing with yourself, with vocally, with the instrument, being able to record multiple tracks. The possibilities are endless. The software that's available for learning music, these are invaluable tools. Is it a substitute for a traditional piano? No, not really. It can be in a pinch, but the real value of these instruments are the things you can't do with a traditional piano. Recording, of course, you can record perfectly, don't have to set up mics, don't even have to tune it. Everything is recorded digitally. It's not actually recording the sound, it's recording the note events, which is why you can take your performance and change it later, change the tempo or the key, or even correct wrong notes on your computer. It's endless. Now, some of the really exciting innovations going on right now are what I made reference to at the beginning of this, hybrid pianos. What are hybrid pianos? Well, Roland and Yamaha have instruments now that kind of bridge the gap between traditional acoustic pianos and digital pianos, in that they have real piano actions. Particularly the Yamaha Avant Grand has an honest-to-goodness piano action, but the sounds are created digitally. And they have a sound system that mimics the resonant qualities of a real piano. Now, why is this important? Well, if you've ever practiced in a practice room piano, you know that they're hideously out of tune, always. The hammers are hard as rocks, the tones are harsh. It's virtually impossible to have a piano that's played 12, 14 hours a day sound even halfway decent. It's impossible unless you have a hybrid piano, where you have the real feel of a piano, but the sound is totally uniform because you don't have to worry about hammers and strings and tuning. These instruments have a real place for certain situations, hotels, cruise ships, restaurants, where a piano is played so much. You know, I have friends who play in some of the nice hotels here on the coast in Orange County, and you know, these instruments are tuned weekly. Sometimes the pianists themselves bring the tuning hammer to touch them up before every day when they play, because it's an impossible task having these instruments sound reasonable. Now, these hybrid instruments could be a perfect solution to these sorts of problems. I just wonder in the future if we may get to a point where the hybrid instruments are more commonplace than real pianos. Now, that would be kind of sad. However, I've got to tell you, if it was a choice for me, and I was going to a music conservatory, and I had a choice between playing on a hybrid piano or a beaten up piano that's out of tune, with a voicing is just miserable, I would choose the hybrid piano. So there is definitely a place for all of these instruments for different purposes. As long as you match your purpose to the right instrument, I think you'll be in good shape. Isn't it exciting to have these possibilities? You know, when I was a kid, they didn't exist. So it's a wonderful thing with the changing world of technology. Thanks for all your questions, and I encourage you to ask more questions, specific questions about technology, and I'll do my best to address them on future videos for you. Thanks for joining me, Robert Esternett, livingpianos.com.